everybody. I'm happy. Why not? Motor City Mad Mouse Show. Have a real treat on tonight. His name is Steve Holman Sr., the legendary voice of the Atlanta Hawks. Once upon a time, they used to play in the Omni Arena. Of course, that's probably before a lot of people were born. Now they're at State Farm Arena. And I had an opportunity to meet Steve when he was the Georgia Sportscaster of the Year award at the National Sports Media Association convention. At that time, I believe it was held in Wake Forest, Winston-Salem. There you go. Throwing a
Right.
blank there for a moment. And Steve and I spent time eating dinner together and had a wonderful time. And Steve has been a really good friend of mine. I've been wanting to get him on for a while, and now have an opportunity to do this and celebrate the most underrated. Because I say that because you're not as nationally as a lot of guys are known person on the planet. My goal is to make sure that people from a national level get to know who Steve Holman Sr. is. And by the time we get done with this show, they're going to know very much who you really are. Steve, thanks for doing this with me tonight.
My pleasure always.
So, anyways, with that said, I have to ask you, what inspired you to get into broadcasting?
Well, as a young lad up in Massachusetts, I would listen to Johnny Most, and uh, I guess from the time I was 8 years old, I decided I wanted to be Johnny Most, and and do that. And luckily enough for me, and God willing, I was able to do it. And I started at 17 working for Kurt Gowdy at his radio station in Lawrence, Massachusetts, my hometown. The first thing I did was go get a pass at the Celtics games from the great Howie McHugh, who at the time was the PR man, along with Jeff Twiss, who was a longtime Celtics PR guy. He was an intern at the time. We were both young at the time, and I started going to the games. I introduced myself to Johnny. Eventually, he let me start keeping score for him. And one night, 1976, he lost his voice. I had to take over and in the middle of a game, and then I did a couple more games after that, another week or two, and next thing you know, I got hired in Boston at the CBS station, and then the guy that was my boss there, Mike Wheeler, came to Atlanta to start the all news radio station WGST, and he said, "Would you like to come to Atlanta?" And kind of the rest is history.
That's amazing. I remember Jeff Twist. I covered a couple of games with the Pistons and the Celtics when I was out there. Amazingly enough, I suffered a torn ligament in my left ankle skiing out there. But Jeff is one of the nicest guys anybody could ever really meet.
Yeah,
And
Jeff's terrific. He was featured pretty prominently in that Celtic series that they had on Max, on HBO Max, which is still out there now. I think it's 9 parts, and he's in quite a few of them.
no, Jeff's a super nice guy. Yeah. So, you talked about most, but were there any other announcers that you idolized in addition to him?
Well, I mean, growing up, I heard all the great ones. Chris Schenkel. It was when I was a kid. It was just as the Patriots were starting in the AFL. So every NFL Sunday, we would get Chris Schenkel and the New York Football Giants into our area. So I actually grew up a Giants fan, and I'm still a Giants fan, and I became more of one when Eli went there because Eli went to Ole Miss, and my youngest son and daughter-in-law both are Ole Miss grads, so kind of got that little connection there, and I still follow the Giants. Although I am a Falcons fan all the way through right now, and also Braves, Hawks, Falcons, everything Atlanta right now. I've been in Atlanta now 46 years in August, so or 40. Well, I make it 45 years in August, and 40 years with the Hawks.
Well, it's amazing. You talk about the fact that you began your NBA career as an assistant with the Celtics, and then you filled in for Johnny Most in '76 because his voice was hoarse. Was that a dream come true for you to be able to do some Celtics games growing up as a kid, knowing full well what their history has been?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up, watching the Celtics all the time, and a lot of nights, and playoffs especially, they weren't on. They were blacked out because the games weren't sold out. Even playoff games sometimes weren't sold out, so they were blacked
Really?
out. And I can remember the famous Havlicek stole the ball game. I was watching it through a bunch of snow on the screen. I had to pick up a Providence station, and try to move the TV in certain ways back like we did in those days. And I could see it through the snow. And of course, I had Johnny on. So I was actually listening and watching at the same time that Havlicek stole the ball thing happened, and it was amazing to listen to it live because I think everybody probably listening or watching to that figured, well, once Bill Russell threw it off the guy wire, it was going to be all over with, and Philadelphia might score and pull off the upset in the series.
Amazingly enough, when you talk about when you began, I began in 1979. Myself, I worked for WXYZ Radio as an assistant producer, and then subsequently went on the air. So I'm amazed at how similar our paths are when you get into it earlier. I've always liked radio and really been on TV a lot, but back then I took what was given to me, and it's a whole lot different than what they're dealing with now, which we'll get in later in the show. So I like where you're going with a lot of this. So let's talk about your first radio job with Kurt Gowdy. There's a guy that covered everything on the planet, and he hires you for your first radio job. What was that like working for Kurt?
Well, it was amazing because he was at the top of the mountain at the time. He
Right.
was doing the World Series. He was doing the NCAA basketball championships. He did the very first Super Bowl, and he was doing Super Bowls at that time. So he was the king of the hill, and to be able to work for him was amazing. And he did a couple of radio shows for NBC at the time, and he would send me out to the games at Red Sox or Celtics or whatever Bruins games, and for his show, I would have to interview people mostly on the other teams that would come in, for the national perspective on it. And I would ask them questions, and I would have to ask them and have say, yes, Kurt, or answer like they were talking to Kurt Gowdy.
Right. Yeah, that really is amazing. You work with a guy like him, and of course, I always used to watch him on the Major League Baseball game of the week, as well as on Sundays. He was paired with, I
Right.
think, John Brody and LD Rogata. So here you are having a chance to work for him with your first gig on radio. That to me was just sensational.
Yeah, and I
One of
did
my
everything. I mean, I not only did the sports, but at the time I did the news. I played records. We actually played records back then. It was
Yeah,
1971 was my first time on the air was Thanksgiving weekend of
wow,
1971. I played records. I did the news. I did some games. I did a lot of softball games. They had Industrial League in my hometown. I would do the Lawrence High games, basketball, football, you name it. $25 a game back then, and I would do all of that along with everything else. So it kind of made me well rounded in the business for sure to do everything, and I think that that's something that maybe young people now don't really get to do, is to immerse themselves into all of it and try to progress that way. Everybody wants to be on Sports Center. Everybody wants to be on TV.
right.
The radio thing. People do it now as a stepping stone for TV, mostly, I think. And a lot of the young guys that are coming up, uh, Ian Eagle's son, Noah, for instance, he did the Clippers for a couple of years, and now he's off, making millions doing on NBC and such. And that's the way it is right now. But I think radio is still, for play-by-play for games, is still terrific. It's right there at the top, especially with the addition now of Sirius XM and the NBA app and the baseball app. You can get the games anywhere now just on your phone. So it's terrific.
Well, amazing. Yeah, that is totally unbelievable. When you talk about radio, one of my mentors is Ernie Harwell. Did you ever have a chance to come in
I
contact
have
with Ernie
I've met
Harwell?
Ernie. Of course, Ernie's an Atlanta native, and so everybody here knows all about Ernie. He used to do the Atlanta Crackers games before he
Yeah.
started doing the Tigers, and made it big that way. Yeah, Ernie, very nice man. Early in my career, when I got here to Atlanta, I had a chance to meet him a couple of times, and at one of the Braves Hall of Fame things, Warren Spahn was there, so I was able to get a chance to talk to him. And it's been terrific to meet all these different people, and if it wasn't for radio, I wouldn't be able to do any of that.
And and you're right. A lot of people don't really understand the value of radio. If you can talk and articulate on radio and paint the picture, I would think it gives you a bigger advantage with that as a training ground before you ultimately get on TV where the pictures do it and you fill in and try to not
Well,
mess it up.
play by play, on radio teaches you to not use a script for anything. You don't have a teleprompter.
Right.
You're doing the game. You're right out there. There's no eraser on a play-by-play broadcast.
Right.
And I think one of the things that you see over the years, a good example number one would be Al Michaels during the earthquake
Right.
uh, in what was it, '89, the World Series with the Oakland A's, when they had that out there. Al was able to jump in and uh, basically do play-by-play of that. When you get a bunch of news anchors that all they do is look at teleprompters all day and all night, something happens that goes off script for them, and all of a sudden it's they don't know they don't know what to say. But play-by-play guys have that experience, so a lot of times when there's a crisis or something happens, the play-by-play guys are the ones that can step in and really do a better job with that.
Well, you're right, and I think the right word that says about the anchors, Steve, is helpless. They really do. They're helpless, dumbfounded, confused. I mean, I know you're trying to be nice about it, but it is
Yeah.
what it is, right? I mean,
Right, right. Yeah,
and
they
that's
can't
what.
go off. It's hard when something happens off script. It's but play-by-play guys, it's what we do every day. So it actually is. It kind of comes naturally to us.
Yeah, the ability to think on your feet. Candy Ebley, do you have time to do a quick station break? We'll go ahead and do that. I'll give you an idea about where you're going to wind up in the next book here. Katie, we'll go ahead and do that real quick before we proceed. We got a lot more coming here on the Motor City Mad Mouse Show. My name is Scott Morganroth. Pleased to be joined by legendary broadcaster Steve Holman. And Steve, it's just so great to have you on, and now we get to do this. So I'll wait for Candy to come on, and when she does, because she's doing a little bit of multitasking as well. So here's what we're going to do. We'll keep it going, and I know she's calling my travel agent right now as we get ready to go to Europe this summer, and I'm really looking forward to doing that as well. So I
Oh,
got
that'd be
her
a nice trip.
busy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I haven't been across the big pond before, so she's working on that. So what we'll do is, while she gets on in just a moment, okay, and she's already telling me that she's on the phone with the agent, so we'll just keep her rolling. So let's talk about Atlanta right now. You moved there in 1980. You covered the Falcons. You covered the Atlanta Chiefs, and of course you did baseball for Georgia Tech. And then you also proceeded to do the '96 Olympic Games with the men's and the women's basketball and boxing. The only year that USA won the gold. So give me your thoughts about those entire overall experiences about doing each and every one of those.
Well, I mean, one of the first things I did, along with Brad Nessler, who worked with, we both arrived in Atlanta at the same station at the same day. I would do morning drive sports; he was doing afternoon. And one of the first things that we did was some Atlanta Chiefs games, the old outdoor soccer team that played at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, and
Mm-hmm.
we would broadcast those. That was quite an experience. And then we did. The station had Georgia Tech games. The legendary late great Al Seraldo for many years did those games, football, basketball. But sometimes when there'd be a tournament, we would each take turns doing a game during that time. And for instance, I got to call the famous Danny Ainge full court basket when they beat Notre Dame, when Brigham Young won that game right at the buzzer. So that was one of the things I was able to do. So it was a lot of great experiences. And then the Falcons, I worked on those broadcasts for 5 years with Bob Neal the first year and Harmon Wages. And then the next 4 years of that, I worked with Brad. And we at the time, the NFL did a story on us. We were the youngest broadcast team in the NFL at that time, and now the two of us may be, one of the oldest teams if we were if we to go back to it again.
Well, the one thing I've always praised about Atlanta, you bring up an interesting point. Lots of times when you build new stadiums, a lot of cities get rid of them within 20, 30 years. But Atlanta does a good job preserving a lot of its stadiums. Obviously, the Georgia Dome went down and you had to let Atlanta Fulton County Stadium go. But think about it, Turner Field is being used for Georgia Tech football.
Yeah, Georgia
So,
State. Yeah, Georgia State.
yeah, I'm sorry, I meant Georgia. Oh, I got them confused. Well, they're in the same state, Georgia State
Right,
football. So
same
that's
state.
great that they're using it. That's true. And I did get to Fulton County Stadium, and it was a neat place when you haven't been there before. Then I went to the old Georgia Dome, which was a cool place too. But now Georgia State's using it. I know the Braves have moved to the suburbs. So, what are your thoughts about the way Atlanta handles its stadium situation?
Well, they for 2 years we played at Georgia Tech and we played at the Dome at the time while they were building which is now State Farm Arena.
Right.
It was Phillips Arena at that time. So when they knocked down the Omni, they built the new arena right on the same location. So that's why we
Right.
had to play games at the Dome for 2 years and at Georgia Tech. We would bounce between the two. But the Phillips Arena was very nice and still is, but it's like a brand new arena. It's like a totally different arena since
Right.
we did the renovations on State Farm Arena a couple, well, 4 or 5 years ago now, and it's considered by all the visitors that come in, broadcasters and such, and other
Right.
teams, that they're just amazed at what it looks like now, and it's basically a brand new arena.
Yeah, and it's obviously downtown. When I was there before, I went to the new football stadium. Isn't it adjacent to where the Falcons are playing right now? What is it? Mercedes
Mercedes Benz, yes, it's the
Benz.
Mercedes
Yes.
Benz, yeah.
I think they're practically across the parking lot, right?
Right, yeah, they're very close, and now we're building Centennial Yards up, so there's going to be hotels and restaurants and shops, and we're going to have one of those mini domes like they have the out in Las Vegas. Where the Eagles are playing, and U2 started it at the Sphere. So this
Wow.
dome that we're building is going to be one of those mini ones. I think there's one in Dallas now, and there's going to be one here in Atlanta. So they're gearing up with the Centennial Yards, getting everything done and ready for the 26th, when we have a lot of the soccer games are coming in, the World Cup. So they're really gearing up for that.
So I've heard talk about the NHL making another return to Atlanta. They've had the Flames and the Thrashers, and it worked out downtown. Do you see the NHL going back to Atlanta, but only in the suburbs?
Well, that's the talk. In fact, there's a Flames hat for you right there.
This guy got the Flames.
That's the Atlanta Flames. There they are. Um, they're talking about the suburbs. There's an old mall in Alpharetta, which is about 40 minutes north of the city, and they're talking about taking that whole area of North Point Mall and turning that into an arena. So I think it's a long way off, but there's still talk of it. And Anson Carter, one of the former NHL players who played for the Bruins, now is on the TNT coverage. I think he's still involved in that, trying to bring a team here. He lives in Atlanta, so I think there's still hope for it. And it was through no fault of fans of hockey why the Thrashers left. Because it turned out that the old owners, they saw a deal that they had, and they really weren't interested in the hockey that much. So I think there's a chance for it to come back. And I know Gary Bettman has talked about it a few times, that he'd like to see a team back here. And of course, we are. We're number 8, I think, right now in the TV market in the country. So
Right.
the NHL would love to come back to Atlanta.
Well, I agree. I mean, and you're only like 4 hours away from Nashville, so you have an automatic rivalry with the Predators right there. And of course, we know Atlanta and South Florida is always a good rivalry as well.
Right.
So let's talk about your time with the Hawks. I knew we were going to get to that sooner or later, but you've given me such a wealth of information on Atlanta sports that I had to pick your brain about that, and I thank you for allowing me to do that. But you've been with the Hawks for 40 years, and obviously now you broadcast 3,083 consecutive games. How have you pulled this off?
That's regular season and playoffs. I don't count preseason. So
Uh,
I'm within
well,
now
okay,
200. I think 257 away from breaking Chick's record. Chick Hearn
right.
has the record of 33-38. So I'm within striking distance now, certainly, and God willing, and I can do it. I think I can maybe pull it off. And Chick worked until he was 86, and I'm a youthful 71 right now. So I I think I can do it. As long as they let me and I can still speak and do it, I'll continue to do it, and I have no plans on stopping.
So how will you feel when that time comes that you're able to break Chick Hearn's record? And let me tell you this: I met Chick Hearn years ago at the Pontiac Silverdome when the Pistons were playing the Lakers in the NBA Finals, and one of the nicest guys I've ever
Yeah,
met.
very nice. He was very nice to Steve Jr. came with me on a trip out west, and he took pictures with him, and it was great. He was very nice, and his wife Marge, who's also passed now since then, she was always very nice. Even after Chick passed, she would still come to the games, and she'd speak to me and did speak to all of the announcers. So yeah, it would be quite if it happens, which I hope it does. God willing, I hope it happens, and If it does, and it's going to be an accomplishment that I, have had an eye on for a long time, because it's one of those records that a lot of the announcers even have said, "Oh, nobody will ever touch that Chick Hearn record," because always something happens and somebody has a streak here and a streak there, and then they miss a game or whatever. But it's just one of those things that it kind of means a lot to me to show up every day to work, and and just be there every night.
So, what do you attribute your durability to? Is it a good diet, or what you eat, or working out?
I don't know. I guess I've been blessed, as they say. I mean, I've been sick. Certainly, I've had some throat issues that I've had many doctors here in Atlanta have helped me through on many games, and there were probably a lot of nights that I shouldn't have worked that I did. I remember one time I was really bad coming back from New York. I believe I had pneumonia, and they gave me an adrenaline shot in one of my cheeks, and they they gave me another shot of something in the other one, and they got me through the game. It was a big steroid shot, plus plus the adrenaline. So I was able to do it, but there have been a few instances like that. But otherwise, I've been very lucky as far as health and that kind of thing. So like I say, if I can continue, I try to walk every day. I have a new dog that you can probably hear in the background,
Right.
Teddy, named after Ted Williams. He just turned a year, so we walk.
Mhm.
There's a place in Noonan, Georgia, where I live called the Link, which is one of those walking paths, and we walk up there a lot of mornings and go 4 or 5 miles. So that keeps me in pretty good shape.
So when I talk about Iron Men, the only two that really come to mind to me, there are probably others. I look at Lou Gehrig and Cal Ripken Jr. How do
Right.
you feel when somebody puts you in the Iron Man category of a Lou Gehrig and a Cal
Well, I
Ripken?
mean, it's amazing to be even mentioned in that. I remember when I passed the Cal Ripken thing. What was he, 26 something? I think.
Right, twenty
So
six 32, I believe.
yeah, 26-32. So when I passed that, in fact, it was a scheduling conflict, but I know the Hawks they had tried to have Cal Ripken at the game when I broke his record, but it didn't
Really?
work out. I was hoping it would, because he comes to our games once in a while. He's been around a little bit, but that would have been kind of neat. But just to be in the same conversation with that, and what, my old buddy John Sterling, who did the games when I first started, 85, 86 with the Hawks. I would do radio when he did TV. I never counted those games that I did. There's probably another 100 or so that I've done, but I didn't count till he left to go do the Yankees in the 88, 89 season. That's when I started counting. But John, he went for years and years without missing. He did over 5,000, I think, consecutive.
Right.
Uh, because they play 162 games, we play 81.
Right.
But John's an Iron Man in his own right. He just retired, and I talk to him, every so often. We stay in touch. So, John is one of those Iron Men too.
Yeah, I saw John a couple of years ago. I was fortunate enough to take a picture. You mean to tell me you weren't counting those other games?
No, I didn't
Why?
count. I didn't start counting. It never really dawned on me to do it. I guess I could go back and do it, but I didn't do every game play by play then. That I would do when John did
Hmm.
TV, I would do radio, and then the games that he would do on radio, I would be with him and say, "That's right, John." That would be my job on those games.
All right, so you felt like you weren't able to do them to the fullest capacity, which is why you weren't able, which is why you decided to not count them. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I started, in fact, I didn't really, I went back and started counting when it got to be, 100, 200, 300. Just kind of
Mhm.
people would say to me, well, how many games have you done, or this and that? And along with our PR people and a couple of the newspaper guys here in Atlanta, we went back and put that all together when it was starting to get to be 1,000, then it was 2,000. So I've got basketballs for 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000. Said I have three grandkids, so each of them will be able to get one of those, and have that as a souvenir after Gramps is gone.
That's funny. Unbelievable. So I have to ask you, have you ever been offered a national TV opportunities or jobs with bigger market? We'll talk about national TV and then jobs with other markets.
No, I
Can't
mean
get as
they've
much of.
there have been people always over the years about Boston. Would I go back? Do I want to go back? I've been here. I've been here so long now. I not as far as any national. No, I've done national radio a few times. The Olympics and some of
Right,
the other. I used to cover the Masters every year before I started doing the Hawks for Westwood One. It was Mutual
okay,
then, Mutual Radio back then. I would do that, but I mean, I've there none of the TV or anything like that. I do have the what they call the face for radio. So I'm happy to do what I am. I'm what they call a lifer, and I
right,
set out to do that. Really, I wanted to be Johnny Most, or just one of those guys that stayed with the team forever because I wanted to be one of those guys that people would bring their kids to a game and say, I used to, and it happens now. I get pictures and that kind of thing. So I wanted to be Johnny or a Vince Scully or any of the guys that have been for years and years. Ernie Harwell did it for years and years in Detroit, and I just wanted to be that, and it really it makes me happy nights at the games when people do come up and they bring their kids and want to take a picture or whatever. So for me, that's been a rewarding part of all of this, and to be around all the players that I've been around over the years with the Hawks, and I still see some of them once in a while. I'll bump into them, and they'll remember the times they were here. So that's always fun. And I've had 11 coaches that I've been with the Hawks over the
right.
years. So uh, it's been great.
Yeah, but what about bigger TV markets? They don't know how good you are, anyways. Have you ever been
Uh,
offered, or does that really matter to you at all?
no, it never really did. I mean, quite honestly, I mean, nobody's come knocking at my door about it. So I don't, and if they did, I don't know if I was very happy here. The boys grew up here, and that's I've been happy with that.
We'll bring in Candy Emily for a quick station break. Have some more great topics to talk about with Steve Holman, senior legendary broadcaster for the Atlanta Hawks. Glad to have Steve on. Candy will give us a station break. We'll continue the conversation. Having a good time, Steve?
Oh, I'm having a great time. I'm going to let my dog out the door right now.
All right, go
So
ahead.
1 second. Just give me
No
one
problem.
second. Let him
Sure.
outside here.
South Florida Tribune Publishing
Go
Company
ahead, Vince. Go
published a
ahead.
book, Lessons from the Microphone, tuning into the enduring wisdom of visionary leaders. It is written by our host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. Talks about the media business and how over his 40 plus years in the media, how media has evolved and how it's changed. Go get your copy today. There's actually a picture of a young Scott with a young Muhammad Ali in there and a young Tommy Lasorda and Scott. Go get your copy today. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where you can get this book and read a plethora of great content. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcast. If you want to advertise, you can always call Scott, 954-304-4941. If you want to be a guest on a show or have show ideas, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to this great program. Thanks, gentlemen.
And that man across the screen from me, Mr. Holman's going to be in the next one when I write this bad boy and I start outlining it in Europe. Great stuff. All right, we alluded to it before. Now we're going to touch base on it again. So it sounds like to me that you really enjoy being the local guy, anyways. Two of the people I really come to mind to me have always been George Blaha of the Detroit Pistons and Eric Reed here in the Miami Heat. And you remind me of that prototypical guy where I want to be the guy that they always take the photos with, that they always remember. George, comment on George Blaha, and then after that, please talk about Eric Reed.
Well, George is just, he's phenomenal. He always has been. He's been one of the nicest guys to me when I first started. And as you know, he's going into he's getting the Kurt Gowdy Award this year
Right.
at the Hall of Fame in Springfield. That is certainly well deserved. I don't think we have enough of our local announcers in that. We've had our share, but they seem to go for the Nationals, a little bit more. But it's great. Al McCoy made it into the Kurt Gowdy Award, of course, Johnny Most and Marv and guys like that. But I think we need more of the local guys. So it's great that George did it. I mean, George is in his 50th year, right? It's going to be 51, I think, next year, and I think he just turned 80 or 81. So he's just
Right.
he continues to roll, and so he's great. And I've known Eric for years too. He used to be up in Providence, up that way, and so I've known him a little bit since then. But he came in. I think when they first started. He was working with what was it? Sam, who did the Miami games first? He came in right after him.
Well, I think I know you're talking about. Doesn't
Yeah.
jog my memory, but yeah, I think I know who you are, but I'm with you. Yeah, Marv Albert's certainly one of the best basketball ones, and I recently had on this very show Kenny Alberts, who's a very good friend of mine at all. And of course, you obviously think the world of Eric Reed, don't you?
Oh yeah, yeah. Eric's a great guy, and like I say, I've known him for years. Kenny too. Kenny's one of those guys, just like his dad. Just he does everything: hockey, basketball, football. I think he just wrote a book too. Kenny did,
Yeah,
and of course Marv had that famous book that he wrote. I'd love to, but I have a game, which is exactly the way most of us are. We get invited places and say, "Well, I'd love to, but we have a game." That's the way it goes. That's part of the business.
well, last summer, amazingly, how you mentioned that, Steve. But Kenny and I, we did do a book swap. I
Oh,
sent him mine. He sent me his. We both signed it back and forth to each other, and he was kind enough to come on my show as well. So let's talk about some of the highlights that you had in Atlanta. Yeah, obviously had one of the best players I've ever watched, Dominique Wilkins. But tell me some of the players, the coaches, as well as broadcasters that you've enjoyed working with the Hawks.
well, I mean, we've had so many guys come through, and Dominique's right at the top. I mean, we still, on our Hawks charter, I sit right across the aisle from him. So, we've been friends for 40 something years. Even before I started doing the games, I would cover some of those Hawks games when he started in 82.
Right,
I came in 85, 86. But, the coaches have been terrific for the most part, really. I'd say a couple of my favorites were Lenny Wilkins, who was here for 7 seasons.
right,
Lenny is just one of the nicest guys ever. Not only a great coach, but a terrific person. Mike Woodson was another one of my favorites of all time. He was here for 7 seasons as well. And I don't know if you saw this earlier. Woody just got the associate head coach job with the Sacramento Kings. So
right.
he's going to work with Doug Christie on with the Sacramento Kings. So I'm glad that Woody's back, and he had been in Indiana for several years, his alma mater. So now he's back in the NBA.
Yeah, Mike Woodson's a really good coach. I had the opportunity to work with Chuck Daly, myself, and Rick Carlisle's a good coach. He's got his team really going strong there.
Yeah, Rick's a good guy too. I mean, Rick's been around for so long, second stint with the Pacers, and I'm really happy for him that they've been able to win both of those games. And we'll see what happens the rest of that series. But there's so many. I can't say there's really anybody that's been anybody that I didn't care for. There've been a couple of coaches here and there, but for the most part, it's been terrific, and all the players that have come through the doors. I'm not sure exactly. Somebody asked me how many. I'd have to figure that all out, but it's probably not as many as you think, because several years there's not a lot of turnover. When we were in the those 80, 85, 86, the famous 88 series, the Larry Bird Dominique series. A lot of those guys stayed around for a while, So, and Doc Rivers is one of my favorites. He was
Right.
here for 9 years, and up until Trey Young passed him this year on the assist leader. Doc held that assist record for the Hawks for many, many years.
A lot of people don't realize that Doc Rivers played with the Hawks for sure. And we're going to talk about Trey Young. We're actually right now. Tell me a little bit about this guy here. He's a very fiery individual. Does he put people in the stands, and how good of a player is he?
Well, he is much maligned, I think, nationally. He doesn't get nearly the credit that's due him. Again, this year he led the league by a wide margin in assists and the assist ratio. He was one of the top play, and he had more clutch shots than anybody. He made more clutch shots than anybody in the league this year. And amazingly, they didn't even make him one of the finalists for that clutch award. So, it's crazy to me. But Trey has been so good, and we're starting to put some really good players around him. Jalen Johnson, who spent a lot of the year hurt, if he comes back healthy this year, we've got a very young team, and Dyson Daniels, who came here and all of a sudden became the defensive player of the year in the NBA, led the league in steals by a phenomenal margin. I mean, it wasn't even close. So we've got guys that are 21, 22. Zach Rizachet, the number one draft pick out of France, he 19. He just turned 20. So in fact, there was one time during the playoffs that our starting five had a younger average age than the Auburn starting five did in
Really?
the tournament. So that's how young our team is, and I think that the future is really bright right now.
Talk to me about Quinn Snyder. He did a really good job at the Utah Jazz, and he pulled him into Atlanta. I
Yeah,
think
well,
he's going
Quinn,
to do a real
Quinn was
job
here.
there.
Quinn was here with Coach Bud for a year before he got the Salt Lake job, so he was familiar with Atlanta, and we of course were familiar with him. And he's just one of those. He's a basketball genius. I mean, he really is. He's one of those guys that you know he uh, he just knows it inside out. He's got great schemes, and just to watch him at shoot arounds and when we're on the road and see some of the things that he can put in and plays and just his imagination of it, and I like the way that he uses analytics, but not like overboard like some people
Right.
do. He does go by the theory that three is better than a two anytime because three is more than two, at least even with new math it is. So that's one of his theories. Kind of tee it high and let it fly. Maybe not to the extent that the Celtics the other night shot 60, and would they make 15 out of 60? But he loves the 3-pointer, and it makes sense mathematically, and just everybody can shoot them now. Even Onyeka Okongwu, our center, he spent a whole summer learning how to shoot threes. He did really well with them this year. So,
Right.
if we can get another big guy with our team to back up Onyeka and be solid in the middle, we didn't have enough size, I don't think, this year. So if we can get some size and add a player here and there, I think the Hawks can be very good this year.
Yeah, well, that was my next one. So you think they're probably a player or so away with a big guy, so they'll be a bit more formidable?
Oh yeah, I think that I'm sure without the injuries this season, I'm sure we would have been at least in the top six and missed that play-in thing. So that's going to be one of the things that they really key in on this season. 3 years in a row, we've been in the play-in. So this year is the year that they really want to make sure they can get into that top six.
So you bring up another great point. Thanks. We call it the GMTA theory on the Motor City Man Show. Great minds think alike. Obviously, you and I are doing exactly that. Just for those of you that are joining us on YouTube, my name is Scott Morganroth. Please be joined by Steve Holman, senior legendary broadcaster, the Iron Man of broadcasting, not too far away from Chick Hearn. When he breaks his record, some 250 some games away, it'll be a record that will never be broken. Anyways, I'm not a betting man, but if I bet, I'd be betting on that anyhow. But nevertheless, what are your thoughts about that play-in tournament? I mean, you got two things that really I think about what the NBA is doing. I don't. Number one, and again, this is my opinion. Okay, I don't like the NBA Cup. To me, it's a gimmick. I don't like it, but that's just my opinion. Okay, just mine. Okay, and the
Well, I
play-in
really liked
tournament.
it this year because we made it. We
Oh,
were in
okay,
the cup tournament. If you remember, we
right.
beat Cleveland twice, we beat Boston twice this year, and we beat the Knicks twice. And one of those wins against the Knicks was the game that put us into Las Vegas. We had won a game and then went into New York, so we had to pack for either coming home after the game in New York or go right to Vegas. So we won. Thank goodness we won and went right to Vegas. We got to Vegas at 4:35 in the morning, and then played 2 days later and against Milwaukee, and it was quite an experience. Really, I thought it was great for our young guys to be in that kind of atmosphere. It was almost like a playoff finals situation. We had all the NBA people were there. It was big time for our guys. I think it really was helpful.
Well, what do you think the NBA Cup is like in just general for the
I like
league?
it. I think
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
Adam Silver's come up with something. I mean, you got to try. You've got to try to do things that will be a little innovative and get people interested. And I think there were a lot of teams, a lot of fans were interested in that. It's a good mid-season thing where we're kind of in a lull maybe at that point of the year, and to be able to follow a team and hope that they make it into that, I think it's terrific. I don't have any problem with it at all.
Well, that's why you're in the business, and that's why I'm here interviewing you, getting your opinion on the business. Hey, listen, I have no problem for the most part. It's just to me, you know what? I still am, maybe I'm just getting used to it. I don't know. But nevertheless, it does give these players a chance under pressure situations when something is on the line. It'll go there. What about the play-in, though? Hi, Brian Pettit. Glad to have you in here.
Well, the play-in, like I said, we've been in it for 3 straight years. We
Right.
the first year we won. We actually won the first game at home. Then we went into Cleveland, in fact, and won. And then went into the regular playoffs to play against Boston. And Trey won a game in Boston in that series too, with the 3-pointer right at the end. So it was exciting. I think it's great. It adds more interest for more teams and for more fans. I mean, this year we were 8. We would have been in the regular playoffs. So that's one thing that worked against us because we weren't in the regular playoffs because of the play-in. But I think the fact that we have 10 teams now instead of just 8 that are involved, that you have to, if you're number 10, you have to win twice and to make it. And if you're the 7-8, if you happen to win the first game, you're all of a sudden number 7. So I think it's a good thing. And I think I know the ratings have been very good on ESPN when they've carried those. So I don't think it's going away. I think that's something that's here to stay.
Last year, the Detroit Pistons won a mere 14 games. This year, they really turned it around and made it, and they lost to the New York Knicks. What are your thoughts about what they've done in Detroit in just one short year?
Well, no, think JB has done a great job with them since he came in, and they've got a lot of great young talent. And I think it was good for them to be in that series against the Knicks and learn from that. Cade Cunningham had a couple of games where he was a little off, and those are the things you learn in the playoffs. You can't. They always say you can't win until you lose, and you've got to get one of those lost series under your belt.
So I know a question that you probably hit with a lot, and you get hit with again. If you had to choose the greatest of all time between LeBron James and Michael Jordan, who are you going with?
Not much of a question for me. It's Michael Jordan. I don't think there's any. I don't think there's any question on that, really. LeBron's great, and he's had a great career, and he's got a lot of things going for him. But I hear the arguments and all of that, but I don't think you can duplicate what Michael Jordan did ever again. So I have to put him right there at the top. But a lot of people talk about, and I really love Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, the things that he did. That goes back probably too far for people that are, the what have you done for me lately crowd. But you go back to Wilt and Oscar Robertson, those kind of guys, Bill Russell. I mean, those are all time greats. But if you had to pick between Michael and LeBron, I would go Michael 100%.
Steve, I'm not so sure if LeBron would even make my top 10.
I don't know. I don't do a lot of that top 10 stuff or whatever, but he's good. I mean, he's good. Look at him. He's 40 years old now. I mean, and he's still going. And you have to have a lot of respect for him for what he's done in his career.
Well, I do, but when you think of all the great players that have played in this league,
I know.
There's
a lot. That's always a great debate. I mean, you've got a lot of players that young people now don't even consider some of these guys. You never hear Wilt Chamberlain's name really mentioned in any of those. And he only didn't win more championships because he would run into the Celtics at the time. And the Celtics were so far above everybody else in the 60s then. And, that's why. But Wilt, I mean, he was terrific. He had 40 rebounds sometimes in a night. He'd score 50 points and have 40 rebounds. I mean, my goodness, how can you be better than that?
So I'm going to give you a list of names here. And I want you just to give me your basic opinion on just maybe a few of them. We already talked about LeBron James. Give me a brief description of how you would describe LeBron in general. What you think that comes to mind?
Well, I think LeBron is an Iron Man in his own right. I mean, just to be able to play as long as he has and to stay as healthy as he has over the years, he's really been basically injury-free for the most part. So that durability is where I'd put him right now.
Michael Jordan.
I would say still the best, the greatest, more championships and all the things that he's done. Just terrific. Top of the mountain.
Magic Johnson.
Magic, terrific too. Played all those positions for the Lakers. Was able to step in and do everything really. And he had a lot of Bob Cousy in him. They used to call him the Houdini of the hardwood, and Magic did a lot of those same kind of things.
Larry Bird.
Larry, I think even now, believe it or not, I think he's underrated by a lot of people.
Right.
The things that he could do, the passing, the shooting, the 3-point shots. You know that '88 famous Game 7 between Dominique and Larry and the two teams. That Game 7, I believe there were 3 3-pointers tried in that game. I
Mhm.
mean, the whole game by both teams.
Right.
So, but Larry could shoot him. You saw him in that when he won, and he turned away, and he knew, all right, who's going to finish second. I mean, if he didn't hurt his back, uh, who knows how much he would have done.
One of my favorite stories of Larry Bird was when I was covering the Pistons and the Pacers, and he was the actual coach. I asked
Yeah,
him after the game, after everybody was done talking to him, said, Coach Bird, because I was really being very respectful of him, not only because what he would do Celtics. I said, I know you were not one of the better athletes that's ever played the game, but I did it, Steve, in a very respectful way. But what made you better than a lot of the other players? So he says with the response, because I told him my name, said, Scott, here's what made me he would do well in the game. You don't have to be the better athlete. You just have to outthink your opponent like three steps ahead of the game. And that's what
right.
this guy was. He's the ultimate man's thinker. He was able to outthink his opponent, and thinking is a tool that you just can't teach. You really
No,
can't. And he's out 3 steps ahead. Let's go to the chat room. It's starting to get a little bit interesting here. Brian Pettit says James would be in my lower top 10. Now we got some people chiming in. It does happen here. Number 33, Larry Bird, the passing, shooting, rebounding, IG, and to say the least, Hustle at JI, one of our big followers. And he says he's wearing his hat. I have some hats out here too. I'll have to get you one once when I get out there. I'm wearing my really, seriously, really hat, watching the legend do his work. So I have to get you one of those. I have a lot of fun with that, really, seriously, really, because nowadays 2025 makes
yeah.
me say those 3 words.
But another thing about Larry, I'm a little biased about Larry because I was the PA announcer in Boston his rookie year. So
Okay.
uh, I did that for 2 seasons, 78, 79, when the Celtics won 25 games, I believe it was. And then the next year, Larry came in and we won 60 that next year. So, he turned that right around too. So I have, great respect for Larry. And, I have a great picture with my son that it's up on the wall. And he's always been very cordial and, not exactly as we would say, not red buttons back in the old days, we'd
Right.
say, but Larry has been terrific, and to be around him that rookie season was amazing.
Well, the only thing I really think about Larry Bird and Magic Johnson together collectively is they saved the NBA from going bankrupt. They were on tape to
Yeah, they
write.
were. I mean, that was Larry. They did in the '70s. In the early part of the '70s and mid '70s, the league was in a lot of trouble. I mean, there were a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
drugs and that
Right.
kind of thing. So they did. They came along with that championship game in college, and then they brought it to
Right.
the NBA. And then they passed the torch on to Michael and guys like Dominique, and then there's always going to be somebody who comes along every time they think, oh, how are we going to replace this guy? There's always somebody who comes along and does replace them.
Yeah, but when you think of those two, they saved the NBA.
They did. They did. Yeah, they put it on the map again.
And I'll tell you one thing: when you talk about Charles Barkley,
David Stern too was part of all that. He was
oh
great with
yeah.
all of that.
Well, David Stern thanks Magic and Larry to this day. But Charles Barkley, actually, I have a photo of him in my book at an NSMA convention. It was unbelievable. I love Charles Barkley because not only
Yeah,
did he
he's
change,
great. He's one of the nicest guys too. I mean, people see him on TV. A lot of young people don't remember when he played. I mean, he was a terrific player. The round bound to rebound is what they always called him. And he's a great guy too. He does a great job on that TNT show. And when my son was 10, I brought him to a game in Philadelphia. I would take him on a trip usually on his birthday, and he was in Philly. And I remember after the game. And I couldn't figure out how Charles knew this. We were in the hallway ready to leave to go back to the hotel because we didn't have charters back that far long ago. Charles came out down the hallway and he said to my son, "Happy birthday." It had been in the notes that he was at the game, and so Charles apparently had looked at the notes and knew that it was Steve Jr.'s birthday. So he came out and said that to him. So I've always every time I see him now at various functions and things, I always mention that to him, and he says he remembers it, but I don't know if he does. But that was it's something that I'll always remember.
Some thoughts about Isaiah Thomas.
Not one of my favorites.
Really? Okay.
I always said when he played, phony smile and that kind of thing. One of the greatest things ever was when he threw that inbounds pass and Larry stole it and gave it to Dennis Johnson. That was great.
Okay, I can appreciate that. I being a Detroit guy, Isaiah, I covered the bad boys, so
Yeah.
and I actually have a piece of their floor in my living room, and it's unbelievable. But
Well,
Isaiah was definitely a fiery player to say the least. Now you
Rick
talked
Mahorn
about,
too. Rick was a coach with us for a year.
oh, was he really?
He was an assistant coach here. So, and now he does the radio with Mark Champion with
Right.
the Pistons, and so he does a
Yeah.
good job with that too. So, I like Rick a lot. Lambier, I could take or leave Lambier too.
Well, I don't like him. So you and I are definitely on the same side. Let me tell you a
Yeah.
past Lambier story. Got about another 10, 12 minutes ago, but I have a couple more good questions I want to throw your way. I was at Boston Garden. I love watching games in the Boston Garden. And, Jack Twist, once again, took good care of me. And that time, I had a busted up ankle, tore the ligaments, and I got into a little exchange with Bill Lambier, but my ally was Dennis Rodman. And I told Bill Lambert to his face, just because you can make your car payment doesn't necessarily I can make mine without working. And
Yeah.
Dennis Rodman went to bat, like, get that daylights out of here.
That
And
was
he
nice.
put,
Yeah.
oh yeah, no, Dennis and I were good friends. And the thing is that you do tend to build relationships. But on that very trip, though, I had a chance to see David Robinson play his first game. Let me tell you,
Right.
the Celtics fans are really, really, really impressed. I've often wondered, though, that you feel that announcers that have kids have a bit more of an advantage over those that don't to be able to get jobs, because we've talked about some of the names over, and I've often wondered about this because you see how the apple doesn't fall from the tree, so to speak.
Well, there are a lot of great broadcasters that are out there right now that happen to be sons of great broadcasters. And it's not that they're not great broadcasters. They did get a head start on it, although
Right.
when your father is Jack Buck, or
Right.
your father is Kurt Gowdy, like Kurt Gowdy Jr. became one of the top producers. He did the Kentucky Derby with ABC for many years, and
Right.
then in fact he still kind of, I think he's semi-retired now, but he kind of runs that the MSG, not MSG, the SNY network in New York. So, and all these other broadcasters, there's Skip Carey, Chip Carey, they came from Harry Carey. And there's a lot of guys like that, but they're all very good broadcasters. It just happens they had the right, they were in the right gene pool at the right time. So they had that advantage over other people. My father was a draftsman, so I had no in anywhere when I started. I just
Right.
uh, like I say, I would go into the radio station in my hometown and practice on weekends. They finally put me on, and they put me on weekends, and then one thing led to another. So I had to work at it, and there's a lot of great broadcasters that have worked at it, and I kind of feel I kind of hang my hat on that my father was not in the business, so I kind of feel like I did it on my own.
Yeah, and that's a thing you should feel very satisfied that you went in there, you created your own trail, you were good enough to continue to make moves, and that's an inspiring note, which leads me to my next question. Boy, I'll tell you, I'd love to be in a booth with you one time, going back and forth. I'm having so much fun. Maybe you got to give me an opportunity to come to a Hawk game. At least let me sit next to you, because now they put us all the way up in the box. Just get me over to State Farm Arena, please, so I can just
Just
wear
let
a
me know when
headset
you
with
want
you.
to come. We'll do it.
Really, I'd
Yeah.
love to do that. I really would love to come to Atlanta and do it. I just imagine what it's like for you and I to sit there, and be able to go out there and do this. It's always been a dream of mine. Never really worked out because I became, a writer and all that. But I've always yearned on the opportunity to play by play. But that doesn't mean I would never want to do it if the right situation came. But now I run my own business here. But
Right.
I don't tell you to have to sit alongside of you and do this would be something I would really be thrilled to do. So that leads me to my next point, though, Steve. What advice would you give to a lot of the younger generation? Because let me pair the fact that number one, okay, you have new media, internet, social media, and you've got a lot of different aspects of this connected. It's not like when we were in old school media, you had to earn your way into business. Now there's so many different ways to do it through podcasts and so forth. But it was a tougher gig, Steve, when we got involved. But how are
Yeah.
you adjusting to this new format, which is what my book is a lot of?
Well, I mean, the podcast things, I do a bunch of them, and they're great. I listen to some of them. It took me a while to figure out what it all was. It wasn't real. It wasn't radio. It wasn't TV. But I think we've advanced past that now. A lot of things like look at Pat McAfee's show. It's so successful. That third hour he does just on YouTube. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's terrific. But the advice I always give when I speak to college kids or even high school kids about it that want to get into broadcasting. Number one, I always say be on time, be early. It sounds very simple, but if you're early, you never have to worry about being stuck in traffic or anything like that. Like I leave my house about 3:15 for a 7:30 game, and it's about a 40-minute drive to State Farm Arena. But I like to get there and get set up and get everything spread out and ready to go, and I don't have to worry about it if there's an accident on the connector or anything else. So uh, that's one of the things I do, and I always tell kids to try to learn how to type too, like the real typewriter. Like the old typewriter, your keyboard on the laptop, the ASDF semi LKJ. Learn that because when there's something breaking news or whatever, you're going to have a little advantage because you can type faster than people that are typing with just their thumbs or one finger. So those are two of the things, and try to do as many things as possible. Like I say, I did the news, I did sports, played records, did all of that kind of stuff. And the more you can do, the more valuable you are to a radio station or a TV station. You can step into certain roles and say you want to do something. So that's the advice I always give.
Yeah, I remember my typewriter all too well. Now I have to admit, I only type with two, three, four fingers just because of coordination purposes, and that's about it. But that's how I wrote my book. It worked. It's called Winning Ugly. I once upon a time I won a trophy for in bowling. This is really true, Steve, for most unusual forms. So if you can imagine how I put my book together, go
Right, right.
figure. So now I got Jay, Candy, put these three up here. Okay, he's got my itinerary set for you, Steve. So you got to see this. Scott, if you come to Atlanta, 1 hour John up the freeway, you close to Athens. Just saying. No, you keep saying it because you're always one. You can do a Hawks game and then go watch a UGA game. Of course, I have my friend there. Doesn't matter is if you're early, get noticed as well. You have peace of mind. You're prepared and reflects journalism. I always get to stadiums between 3 to 5 hours early because I preparation is something I really believe in. The more I know ahead of time, the game is easy. Just like how I do on these shows. Once you get on the air, it's nothing, right? But it's a prep work leading up, so you sound credible all the time. Yeah, I
Right.
got two, three, four fingers. Whatever it did, it wouldn't. I didn't use them all. I don't have that ability to use all these
Yeah,
guys. Okay, and I
yeah.
have a bad thumb issue, but that's for another day. But no, with all due respect, you're right. You got to be prepared, or you're in trouble. And one thing that came to mind: do you feel that you have to be a good writer to be a good broadcaster?
Yeah, I would say certainly, yeah, but I think if you can speak it the same way you could write it, I think that's the way to go. I mean, yes, to be a good writer is an advantage, certainly, yes.
Well, sure, because you got guys like Mike Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser are the two like guys that come to mind as well, and these guys have been doing it for ages. So
Right, writers, yeah.
so yeah, I mean, so that validates. I'm so glad, Steve, that we've had an opportunity to cover so much ground because I know a lot of people are watching the show and they'll be able to rewatch it and talk about it again because this is a good show. Not only do we talk about the old time NBA, but as we close this thing out, do you feel that we miss the old NBA or do you like what you're seeing with the new version of it?
I like it both. I do like the new style. I'm not one of those, this is the way we did it back in my day. I like the game now. I really think it's fun. It's up and down. It's something that young people can really kind of grasp, and to go back, the traditional TV radio is kind of going. It's all like Sirius XM on radio. It's on the phone. People are watching on the app, and the days of people sitting down and listening or watching a game for 2.5, 3 hours, I think those days are gone. And the young people that are watching, maybe watching on TV, but they're doing something else on their phone. So that's where we've gone. I think it's been better for young people to watch this. The 3-pointers are exciting. The game is exciting. I think the young players that we have now are certainly very exciting, and the old guys will tell you they're all better athletes than they were back in those days. So I do love the old days too. I mean, there's nothing better to me than watch some old games with Bob Cousy and John Havlicek and Bill Russell and that kind of thing. So I like both, but I'm not one of those stuck in the past, and I like to move forward. And the young guys keep you young. I mean, they keep me young too. We've got 19, 20, 21-year-olds on our team.
Well, Jay has a great question, and then we'll give it to Candy Ebley for our final station break and put it up. What's the difference between an athlete transitioning to a broadcaster versus a journalist becoming a broadcaster? That's a good question.
Well, I think you don't necessarily have to be a journalist to become a broadcaster. I think they're very similar, and it's helpful to have some journalism in your background, which most of us have. But for the athletes, though, it's very difficult, I think, for them to transition. A lot of them think it's easy, and it's not that easy. I give you an example of Dennis Scott, right, who's big now on NBA TV and TNT and everything. Dennis came and came to me and did 3 years with me off and on, in the analyst chair, and I really helped him learn how to do it, and even when he went into the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame here, he gave me a little shout out, which made me happy, and but those guys really have to work at it. They just can't walk in there and I think Tom Brady's fighting. It's not as easy as it looks.
Right.
It's not as easy. The athletes add a lot, certainly, because they played the game. They've been there and done that. But to become an athlete and a broadcaster, that takes a certain amount of special ability. Frank Gifford was able to do it. Come from the broadcast booth, from the football field onto the broadcast booth. Pat Summerall, guys like that. They really. They became more than analysts. They had their own shows. They did play by play. I mean that takes somebody really special.
Excellent question, Jay. It really is. All right, we'll bring Candy Ebley in for one more station break. You get to see the book. You got me thinking. I want to get to Atlanta and come up to see a Hawks game and be able to sit right alongside you. I think it'd be really cool. And then we could do some good stuff as well. So now you've got that on my list, and there's my travel agent on there as well. So I'll go ahead, Candy, get one more station break. We want to thank Steve Holman Sr. for joining us on this edition of the Motor City Mad Mouth. After we get done, the Sports Exchange is next. So go over another station break. Steve, I can't thank you enough for doing this, really. Seriously.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So, all right, Candy, one more station break, and then we'll say our final goodbyes to Steve, and hello to Sports Exchange. Go ahead, Candy.
South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by our host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there is also a plethora of great content, so go check it out. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you see the red subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner, that means you have not yet subscribed to us. Please do so and share us with all your friends and family. If you want to advertise or sponsor a show, you can call Scott 954-304-4941. And if you want to be a guest or have show ideas or topic ideas, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to you gentlemen.
All right, thanks. Special shout out to Dave Gorin and Natural Sports Media Association. That's how I met Steve. Really great.
His birthday today. It's Dave's birthday today, by the way.
Yeah, I did wish him a happy birthday on Facebook, and he said, thank you, Scott. And don't worry, I always have yours in mind when it's listed up there as well. So Dave's good people. I've known him a long time. Enjoy going to the event. I doubt I'll make it this year because I'm headed to Europe during that time, and I'm really looking forward to doing this. It's been a treat I've wanted to take. So I try to get there when I can. But having you on has been something that's absolutely awesome. And the fact is, I do go through Atlanta a lot. And now that we have this show in our pocket, hopefully we'll be able to do other stuff, projects down the road. But Steve, I can't thank you enough for coming on the Motor City Mad Mouth Show. I want to thank Jay as well in the chat room. I want to thank Brian Pettit for joining us and those of you that will listen. So with that said, Steve, once again, God bless. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. The Sports Exchange is coming up next. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll have another Motor City Mad Mouth soon. And now Steve is headed to the second book. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.